Global markets continue to be quite difficult. From an equity investor's perspective, we have quite a few headwinds that we are facing, and that has resulted, if you look at markets year to date, in quite a bit of volatility as well, ups and downs. So markets are also not really finding a good direction as well. The drivers are obviously the rising inflation, which the central banks want to counter with rising interest rates, which is not a good situation for equity markets because anything that is future growth basically gets discounted at a higher interest rate, so becomes worth less today. So this is why you see the rotation in the market out of those previous winners, those companies that were quite popular because they have the big growth numbers, into those companies that have been very much not in favor before, which are more the boring part of the market, the value part of the market. And that rotation is still something that is going on for the time being. Yeah, the advantage of thematic investing is actually that what we have just discussed with regard to the current market situation is of lesser importance in the end. Because here we are looking for developments that are really long-term and structural of nature. So long-term is a really longer-term view, many years, probably even decades of development. But also the second point, structural. That means independent of the shorter-term cyclical developments. And when we talk about interest rates, when we talk about inflation, when we probably also talk about recession, which is a big question mark now, then we can say that many of the developments that we are looking at are actually fairly independent of these happenings. If you think about something like the energy transition, which is one of the themes that we have identified, very obvious theme, obviously, then this energy transition, the decarbonization, needs to happen irrespective of the current state of the economy. So we can use the themes to actually take a step back from the market and focus on what is important in the long run and really try and isolate our portfolios from those shorter term noise on the market. Again, I would answer this rather from a thematic point of view, because we are not so much interested in these macroeconomic news flow as I have just discussed, but we would look at it from a theme by theme basis. What are the drivers behind the themes and what could be actually new drivers, new catalysts for themes. And again, I might stick with this theme of energy transition, where we now have a second goal coming up. So we not only want to achieve the energy transition, the decarbonization, but also from a European perspective, to some extent US perspective as well, we want to have a higher degree of energy independence. And this energy independence can in the end only be achieved by local production, which again then is renewable energy. So here you have two targets which are solved by the same tool in the end. So as a summary, we would expect that what we have planned anyway, the investments that we wanted to make in the energy transition, now need to happen more quickly and need to be sped up. So that should be good for those companies that provide these solutions and should be good for us as investors. This is the way to look at it, and this is the check that you need to do on a theme by theme basis then. We are managing a multi-thematic portfolio, not just multi-thematic, but also actively managed. So we are picking and choosing the themes, and what is important for us is really, we want to have a mix of themes in the portfolio. You must not confuse thematic investing with technology investing, because that would be a very one-sided portfolio in the end if you're starting to mix technology themes, where there's a lot of choice obviously, but there's also, and that is the good news, themes that have very different backgrounds, that have very different drivers. And here you can really put together a diversified portfolio of themes, a multiple theme portfolio, and that's the balance that we want to find. So you've heard about the next generation energy, the energy transition theme. I might mention our infrastructure theme, so the build out of infrastructure on a global basis, the US infrastructure in a very poor state, for example, that has a lot of raw materials exposure. So that's something that can balance your portfolio, for example, in the current situation as well. Or if you think about the theme clean water, we have water problems, manifold water problems on a global basis, and we really need to start and fix these problems. And the good news is we have companies that can provide the right solutions for this. So let's start and make these investments, and we can benefit as investors from this. Or as a final mentioning, probably the pet economy, goods and services around pets, a global phenomenon where we see the relationship between pet owners and pets become ever closer, so the spending pattern becomes different. We are spending more on our pets. That is something that, again, is a very different part of the market, but highly interesting as well. Think about the mix, actively managed multi-theme portfolio with a mix of different themes. Yeah, what we would want to see is a bit of a bottoming out of the markets. Markets have been quite under pressure. We have seen a big valuation compression as well. We would think that probably this should come to a bit of a bottoming as well. But also, if you think about this discussion around, are we going into recession? If we are going into recession, and I don't know whether we do this, I'm not sure anybody knows at this point of time, but if we just theoretically thinking about this situation, then we are going into a situation where growth will be scarce as such. And investors really need to look at what they are going to invest in. If the valuation catch up, value versus growth, has already run a good part, then what are the alternatives? And I think in that situation, the themes, the long-term structural change focus, will become more valuable. So I think we are going to see a shift in attention on the market. Investors will become more interested again in the themes because they provide the longer term orientation. So I'm not so much afraid of negative news flow because I think we've already seen a lot of this being priced into the market, and at a certain stage investors will start looking through to the future development, and then there will be more focus on the themes again, which is a good situation for our portfolio.